Welcome back to my show.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Oh my goodness, I'm happy. I'm happy to be here on a topic that makes me very unhappy.
Amen.
Mainly because people probably don't know. I was Joni's head writer for 7 years. So I was very close with this family. I did these little great vignettes when we were moving from one story. It's kind of like funny that God brought me out of world wrestling and other things to then, I always knew I was going to be doing Christian TV to I end up with this job at Daystar Television working for Marcus Lamb and Joni. And the only reason is Marcus was a huge fan of wrestling.
Right.
But I always felt one of these things just doesn't belong here. I loved being there, but I also felt that I felt like a little bit like David and Saul's kingdom, where they really loved me. Even at a Christmas party, they did this wonderful, oh God, it felt so good. This little mini movie to honor me. It was like a joke where, the Sky Angel sends, Jacob down to Daystar to be the writer for Daystar, and he's pitching shows to Vince McMahon and, about Moses and all these things. And I'm watching this thing at our my very first Christmas party there in this hall. It was so wonderful because this was before I really grew to love the family. I was still kind of new, but it was a weird feeling because I remember feeling like right now they're singing your praises. What's going to happen when they want you gone? I felt a little bit like David right now, it's like everybody's cheering you on, but what's going to happen?
Right.
That ended up happening 7 years later through just, unfortunate experience with what happened with Joni and her husband, Marcus. And it was very strange how it ended up coming down on me. There was a big lawsuit that I didn't know about. I knew nothing about any of this stuff because Marcus was having an affair with someone who was very close to Joni. So just imagine being Joni, right?
Right.
And I was her head writer. I wrote for the Joni show. We even won an Emmy. I said, we're going to win an Emmy when I got there. God really blessed this place.
Yeah.
Especially when I was there. And I miss
not because
everybody.
of you, Jacob.
No, definitely not because of me, but because God purposed it and brought me there for a reason.
Yeah.
I ended up leaving it because God's like, okay, now you got to go sell mattresses and you have to grow a YouTube channel.
There you go. And you did great. 200K is not shabby.
I have a YouTube channel and I think that people would really enjoy it. I hope that you all look up Jacob Israel on YouTube and you'll like it, or maybe there's a link somewhere. But I ended up working there and I did these little vignettes with Jonathan, Rachel, and Rebecca. I love these kids. Jonathan came to me once. He was trying to write a girl a letter. He was young and he was like, how should I do it? And I was with him and I really cared about this kid. And I always felt like, if I'm being honest, I felt like Marcus didn't, I felt like he was a little less compassionate than I am as a father. I felt like, Jonathan was just such a smart, wonderful young man. He'd be like, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And I always thought, I'm like, that reminds me a little bit of The Great Santini, that movie, where you.
No, I never saw that.
Yeah. It's a movie about a Marine who's a drill sergeant who's really, really tough on his kids and they needed to say sir and they needed that or else. And I felt for him, but I'm not saying Marcus was a terrible father. I'm sure he was, but I know, just so you know.
I'll say it. I think he was a horrible father.
Well, I mean, first of all, listen, you don't cheat on your wife.
That's what I know from other people talking, including Joni.
Right. Well, and see, now I do know Joni, her brother, Lane, I love this guy. Very few people I've had in my life that were really dear friends of mine. Lane, I looked at a little younger brother, and Justin now, he's gone through a journey. He's working in Christian TV still. Lane is still, I believe, head of the department, who's just an awesome guy.
Right.
But when I left, it was like I got cut off from all of them. It was like only recently did I reach out. When I heard about Marcus, I reached out to Joni, and we didn't leave on good terms. Because I was younger, and I just had a kid on the way. I had Ethan coming. And we just bought a house. And, it was, I think that it was completely tied to this whole scandal because they'd fly me out. I worked from New York for years
Wow.
And they'd fly me out. It was wonderful. It was like Jacob worked for Laban, right? Laban, he was a shepherd over there, feeding the flock. And then he's like, I got to go. And they're like, no. And, I worked for them for 7 years. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
How did you get involved with Daystar? If you were in New York,
I knew that God.
Weren't they in Alabama back in the day, or were they in Texas?
No, they were still in Texas. Yeah, okay. They were in a little renovated Piggly Wiggly.
Yeah.
And when I got there, things escalated very quickly. Like I believe we were in 300,000 homes, I think, at that point, to like billions of homes in like short amount of time, maybe less than a year.
Wow.
And like I said, when I became Joni's writer, there was, of course, like when I went into that field, here's the guy that I've, in their eyes, made it, because I'm coming from WWE and elsewhere. So I was probably a lot of competition and everything else, but I just wanted to serve. I took a huge pay cut coming there. I was like, I'm going to sell my house. I'm going to make this much money. Because I wanted to serve the Lord, so I was like ready. I was ready to go.
You were the only one there doing it.
Well,
no, I'm kidding, because I know there's a lot of good people that work there.
There are.
Yeah.
There are. But once again, you don't know people's hearts. And they did, like I said before, they even the producers, they set me up for failure. I remember doing a piece once, and all of these, by the way, this was in the very beginning. We ended up becoming very good friends, and I love them all. I can't say anything bad about anybody because, we were all young and everybody makes mistakes and everybody acts out of fear and insecurity. So, I have to have a lot of grace for them. And, but at the time, I did this one little vignette. We were doing a show with Lee Grady, and I did this vignette about miracle healing. And I kind of spoofed it up, and I was wearing like a top hat, and I had like a bunch of people in a line with their, walkers and everything else. And I did this whole thing because that's what the show we were doing. The producer okayed it. I just wrote it. I pitched it. And next thing you know, there was a huge production meeting, and I was sitting in the back, and I was so excited because I really loved my job and I loved working there. And they pulled up the roll-in of me, and Joni was very upset with it and said, this is not who we are. And I didn't mean it to be that way. But I was thinking, like, wow, that was like a big slap in the face. And the producers okayed the show. I wasn't the boss of the show. I was just the writer, So like you see that there was a lot of competition and everything else. Thank God that was all in the very, very beginning.
Right.
And what I do know of Joni is that she's very patient. I remember one time we were called into a meeting because we were having issues with the other. It was a competition. Everybody was, worried. And here I'm just like, I just want to do the work, Lord. My first roll-in, this is a true story. My first roll-in, they gave me like the worst editor, the producers, not Joni. The worst editor was almost like they were trying to set me up to fail. And it was this project about a Marine or somebody, a young guy who gets into service, who's serving and ended up getting baptized. And I did this whole piece, and I wrote a poem. Who does that in Christian TV? Put the poem in it, used my voice, and I did my whole little thing because, I like to be creative.
Right, of course.
And Joni cried on air. Joni cried when she watched it. Joni cried, like literal, and it wasn't like force. It wasn't. And I said, this is somebody that, really probably has their heart in the right place. I always felt Joni had that. Now, that being said, I could pull up the emails I have with human resources where I sound like I hate them, right? No, but like literally, I went this morning before coming on here. I wanted to go back in time to 2013.
Right.
I mean, I was so unhappy with it because I loved my job so much. And I felt like what happened, but really, what did they do? I was living in New York. My producer got involved with this lawsuit, and, whether they carried me along with it or not, when God tells you to leave, are you going to complain to people? I remember because I even had a little bit of a back and forth because people are like saying, why are you it always seems like you're coming to Joni's aid and rescue. I said, well, no, I'm sharing what I believe is true. And by the end of the show, I think people are going to see this whole situation a little bit differently. But I want to start by saying it wasn't always like gravy train for me. It wasn't always great over there. Right. I was always the oddball, the weirdo. And even when she read my novel, loved my novel, but she thought that I was a little bit we'll say like more immature in the scriptures. I had different ideas about hell and everything else. You know this. I have a very different idea than, say, religious mainstream Christianity. So it was interesting that God brought me there. But what I know of them as a family, you know, like Joni I thought she was the best of them. You know,
were you there during the years that he was having the affair?
Oh yeah.
And so you know the woman that.
Not only that, this is a true story. When I first got the job, I got a vibe. I did. I got a vibe, and I went to his assistant because as God would place it, this is funny. When I went out there, God put me in someone else's house. When I say God, Daystar put me up in Justin's house. And he told me when he met me, it was great. He said, yeah, you know, God told me to save the upper room always for the prophet. So, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. He's like, so anytime people come and visit, you know, I have that room for them. But yeah, I got a vibe early on, and I asked even Marcus's assistant. I said, is there something? And I kind of got like a nod. So I kind of always knew. Yeah. So I always had this vibe and the sadness for Joni. Because, you know, you could tell that she really loved her family so much. And like I said, I did these little vignettes with Jonathan, Rachel, and Rebecca. They were young. Rebecca was like, you know, so they were all so talented, but Rebecca was like the shining star. She was always so great on camera. Jonathan was always so sweet. And Rachel, they were also, that's why it's so sad to see them here now. Right. You know, and to know that all of the stuff that happens with Susie and Jonathan, there's a lot of it that, you know, at first when I heard it, I said, oh man, this is horrible. You want to talk about like, and then I think back to like, remember I was telling you earlier that I did a video when I was let go. This is strange. I got to show this to you. Called The Fall of Saul. I don't know. Let me see if I can get it so that you can read it. But if you look at
you can see it. Description. Fall of Saul, 2011, January 23rd.
Right. So I did that video when I knew I was being, you know, let go, fired. And I had already kind of said things. I said, you know, you really got to dedicate this place to the Lord. You really got, I said, if you don't, I'm telling you, there's gonna be a problem. So I did this video. And in the video, I was literally talking to Marcus and Jonathan because Saul's son's name was Jonathan. And, so when I heard he passed, I was like, I remembered that video and I thought, oh my God, how horrible. Because in the video, I told the story about how Saul, you know, he just started taking it in his own hands. He wasn't listening to the Spirit of God anymore. He wasn't, he didn't care. He didn't want to, he wanted to do it his way. And he ended up going to, you know, to all sorts of wrong people, the witch, right? So, and Jonathan was his son. And so that's why at the end of the video, like I said, if you don't leave the system, you're going to fall with Saul. And to see this happening now, today, it's crazy. Not to mention when the news broke with.
So this was like 14 years ago, right?
Well, this is crazy. This was exactly 9 years, 10 months, and 10 days before the news broke about Jonathan and Susie and the SA thing, which I have a very, well, I have a hard time with a lot of the stuff that I've learned since then. You were saying something that you heard before.
Right, when we were off camera. Yeah. I'll talk about it in a little bit.
Definitely.
But I want to, before we like get too far with it, what was, when you reached out to them because Marcus had died, were you received?
Oh, I was mending fences. You know, it's like my best buddy, Lane, I hadn't talked to him I've reached out a bunch of times. The only person I kept in touch with was Justin. He was going through a difficult time. And I knew that God was going to find his way out of it. Ironically, I love these people so much. They're in my novel. There's two characters, Justice and Lance. And ironically, when Thomas leaves that place, Justice and Lance, one of them leaves the place as well. The other stays. And so it's interesting. Justin left, I left, Lane is still there, but they're my boys. They were like my brothers. I love them so much. And, you know, now here we are, how many years later? It's 9 years, 10 months, 10 days later. I think of like 911, you know, it's like, it's just, the whole thing is really sad. So I got in touch with Joni just to basically say, hey, here's the deal. I'm sorry I wrote that letter to Human Resources. I did. I felt like Martin Luther. I was like, I'm going to tell them everything. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to lay it out. I'm going to say, this is where you're doing it all wrong. And I did. And I sounded like such an arrogant, hot-headed jerk. Like that was only, God, 10 years ago? It's amazing 13 years ago, because we were still dealing with it. To see where I am now, to feel like, God, I was really immature. I was acting out of ego and fear. I didn't know what I was going to do. I felt like I had been wrongly terminated, but I really wasn't wrongly terminated. I mean, think about it. If I moved back to Texas, they probably would have kept me there.
Right. They wouldn't have to fly you back and forth.
And to be honest, I come out of the blue and we have our like morning devotion or whatever. And I have this dream and I'm looking at the studio floor and there are all the cracks in the floor. This is a true story. There are all the cracks in the floor and they'd have to laminate over it, because when you're moving the cameras, you don't want bumps. So they'd have to continue to laminate over it and it costs a lot of money. So I had this wild dream that something was going to shake the very foundation of Daystar. And I got up and I told everybody, not knowing there was like a huge lawsuit, not knowing he'd be going on Dr. Phil in like a month talking about how he was, having a terrible affair and he wrote
trying to get ahead of it.
Could you imagine your friend in your home and you're reading leaked emails that your husband's saying you're the future Mrs. Marcus Lamb? Could you imagine being Joni?
No.
And now could you imagine, I'm just saying, let's put all the other stuff aside, loving your kids and everything else. You were with a guy who did that to you. You publicly stayed with him. You worked on things. You did what you thought was the right thing. And then finally, I hate to say this because this sounds very cruel, but finally you're free, right? You're free. Now, maybe she really was like, everything was okay. I don't mean to look at it that way, but if it wasn't okay, could you imagine the mindset? That's what I'm getting at.
Right.
I mean, it seemed like they were very much in love towards the end and everything else. But I mean, it's hard to come back from something so humiliating. And the way that Marcus spoke to people sometimes, you could imagine how he might speak to her.
Right.
And what do I know? But so now she's married to Doug Weiss, who I wrote many shows with. He thought he was a nice guy. I always thought it was interesting. He's a sex expert. I'm like, oh God, this is ridiculous. I always thought it was so silly, but it's an important thing to talk about. People should,
well, if you have a level-headed person, he's clearly not level-headed.
I don't know much about him.
Yeah.
I'm not here to speak on his, but I've done a couple of shows with him and I do find it interesting.
And so going back, did they receive you when you went to call about Marcus's death? Were you able?
Oh God, Joni was so like, it was like she was happy, responded right away.
Oh, good.
And I got to tell you something. I was very rude to her.
Yeah.
I wasn't like the people online that'll do a video and say things like, I said things to her, things that were unfair, things that may not have been true because a lot of my information was coming from somebody that was connected to the family very closely. So you believe it,
Right.
And, and then when I was
what about like other people? There's been so many people that have worked there that have kind of come out as whistleblowers that, Joni's a little bit of a prima donna. And did you see her behave that way with other people? I know that you said she wasn't that way with you. No.
I mean, I think she treated me. Well, I mean, let's be frank. There was one time that she was having lunch with Joyce Meyer and everything else. And I had a plane to catch and I think it was her birthday. And I just wanted to say happy birthday, but they were talking and I stood there and I felt like I stood there for an obscene amount of time. And I thought like, it could have been just, oh, excuse me, Joyce, but I know it's Joyce Meyer, and then I remember her saying, wasn't that great? And I said, yeah, I just want to say happy birthday. So, I mean, what was there a sense of entitlement? I think anybody in a position of authority, or a boss is, but no, I mean, I wasn't scared of her or threatened by her like I was of Marcus, but I wasn't scared of Marcus like I was when I was working for Vince McMahon or my district manager at the mattress store. Right. What I'm saying is people are human. And when you have authority, it's like, and from what I understand with Joni is because I came in and I heard that they had a lot of people close to them, really tried to hurt them, really tried to overthrow Daystar and take it over. So they have a lot of like baggage. But what I do also know about most of the people that work there is a lot of them addicts, that through the ministry turned their lives around, started off in the prayer room. Next thing you know, they're singing on the floor with Joni. I mean, it was like, I broke somebody's arm wrestling.
No.
Story.
Oh, no.
Oh God, Norman Nombakoya. He was we loved him. He was such a big guy. And at the time I was, we were both, just being silly. And so people were talking, saying, who's stronger? Let's do an arm wrestle. So like I beat him once and he beat me once. And then they had the big tiebreaker over lunch and he ended up with a spiral fracture. And, I was like, oh, I'm going to lose my job. I didn't lose my job. When I spoke up to Joni and I said the thing, I said, this is a true story. I called her producer who was there before me and other producers. I said, it's a den of vipers. True story. In her office, because we weren't all getting along. Right. And this was in the very, very early days. And I acted like, once again, in the title jerk, and I'm calling them a den of vipers. That's kind of like you should just say we're not getting along, right? But Joni was like, she goes like this. It was so funny. I'll never forget it. She goes, den of vipers. Okay, let me just. And I was like, oh crap. I said, can I go to the bathroom? True story. Went in the bathroom, washed my face. I said, okay, Lord, help me get it together, because we're very ego driven as people. And when we're in fear, I was in fear I was going to lose my job. I gave up everything. I took a huge, massive pay cut. Massive, to work there because I wanted to serve God so badly. And I don't regret it. I wish I could go back and work there now. Doesn't matter that we believe a little differently. Doesn't matter that people have different ideas of that organization, but that place should have somebody like me working there. Should have somebody like you.
Did you ever see anything with children?
Oh God, no.
Were there even kids around at all?
Never. What I know about Joni and her children is that she loved her children. Joni was very protective. She was all about her family. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's what I know for a fact. So this much breaker, I don't know how anybody can watch that when her first video, maybe it's because I know her and I know when she's being kind of like reeling in the moment, but like my heart broke for her, like when I first heard the news, I was like, well, I warned them.
That was my next question. What were your first thoughts about it?
When I first heard the news, I went back to, oh crap. I thought they were going to get their act together because I had this dream. It's a true story. I know that people are going to think this is woo-woo, but the dream is what got me in trouble to begin with for sharing. But I had this dream where I was at Rebecca's baby shower. And everybody was there and I was in the outskirts and everybody was happy that I was there. It was like we made peace. Now, this is before me and Joni I even emailed her. We don't communicate that often. She's always like, thanks. Hope your family's good. God bless you. Appreciate you keeping she didn't say anything, by the way. When I heard about this, I reached out to her immediately and she didn't say this, that, and the other thing. She said, just please pray for my family. This is a hard time, and where she could have been like, oh, it's all this girl, she's a loon. She could have said a bunch of things. But she didn't, so that's that. But no, I never saw, and I know for a fact that she loved her grandchildren. Oh my God. Like even more so than you would think, because I heard this from other people, like from Justin and everybody else. So when I first heard the news that this possibly happened, when Jonathan and Susie came out with their first video, I was shocked. And I was like, immediately I knew who they were talking about. And not that I ever met him or anything else, because you got to remember, I left many years ago. They were still children. And so I was like, oh, I guess that they didn't get their act together since Marcus left. That was my first thought. That was your first thought, yeah. And my second thought was, I love Jonathan so much. I thought this kid was so sweet. He's still, when I see him, I think he's so sweet. Yeah. And he
has a very gentle appearance.
Very different from Susie. From what I've learned from Susie and I've watched in the videos, very different. And you know what? Sometimes opposites are good for each other. I'm not saying that, they shouldn't be, but I can see where fear and suspicion and gossip can turn, your wife, and you want to support your wife. And I can see how, when you're worried about your child, you carrying that and then going public with it, forget about the fact that they recorded and this was prior planned and they went out of their way to show everybody how horrible their mother is. who fired me, and I hated. I want to, be frank. I don't work for Daystar. Daystar, they don't even follow me. I was so mad at them. This is true. I was so mad at them. I'm the only one that really came out and tried to say, hey, you know what? I'm somebody that actually went through this. I know the steps. Okay. When my daughter was going through this, when she was having nightmares and she was telling us what was happening, and she was having, I don't even want to get into all that. CPS was immediately.
Sorry you had to deal with that.
No, I mean, well, listen.
But it wasn't at Daystar, for clarity.
No, this was, I was still working for Daystar at the time. They knew all about this. They knew I was
What I'm saying is whatever happened with your daughter didn't happen there.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, no. I'm being clear because
no, just to be clear. Yeah, you're right. I should be clear about that. My ex-wife got involved with a bad guy who was many years younger than her and was on house arrest in my house. And he was, it was a really bad time, and I had no money. I'd lost everything. I'd given my house to my ex. I just trusted God would always work it out, and always does.
Yep.
My ex and we're close. She's in California. She's everything. The past is the past. It all worked together for the good. But do you know why my daughter is thriving today? Is because when we're going through this, we knew that there was an issue. We had plenty of evidence to back it up, but to take this to court and to try it would further damage her. And we were told by the top forensic evaluator, top in New York, she was, that you don't want to relitigate this. If the guy's out of her life and never going to be around her again, it's best for her to not be reminded of this so she can heal. Right. And studies say this. And so what we decided to do was not to press charges, leave it in God's hands. That guy ended up a drug addict, ended up in jail, ended up stealing. His life is living hell, and I knew it was going to be. Right. I had people at the time.
There's a difference between making that choice and covering it up. And I think
of course.
That's the concern that a lot of people have. And obviously when 18 programmers leave their
but that's neither here nor there, because they're leaving because of what's being said. They're not leaving because they know it's true. They're leaving.
But my point is they're leaving because it hasn't been resolved.
Well, it hasn't been though, or has it been? Is anybody in jail?
Well, it's something that takes a while. I don't know if you're familiar with that. If somebody goes after it with, doesn't make the decision that you made, then it does take a little bit.
Well, now here's a question for you.
Things verified.
Yeah, here's a question for you. What did you share with me earlier about how Jonathan and Susie were at an event? And someone said that Joni was babysitting?
This is what Madison Marquette has posted on Twitter. That's why I can share it. Madison Marquette is saying that she has inside information, this is alleged, that Jonathan and Susie went to Arizona. And when they went to Arizona, somebody was watching their child. And that the person watching the child was Joni.
Yeah.
And if she's covering it up, then that's kind of a weird thing,
right? Like, why would they do that?
Right. That doesn't make any sense.
So I did this video and I shared about my daughter. I shared about everything that we went through. The first thing was CPS was contacted. There was an investigation. Police were notified. There was an exam. Okay. Now, what was presented by Julie Royce, this whole crew, the Wake Up, Bake Up crew, and all these, they just hammered her. They're calling her this. And then when who've gone through this, point out simple things like, well, this is what we know about the story. Something happened at the school, or so Susie was told. She went to Joni, tell us what happened. She couldn't identify the person who supposedly in her family, her immediate family. I can't identify the person. All right. But originally it was about the school. It was about going to the school and what was the problem. Okay. Right. But then what happened? So I've heard, and and I could be wrong, you correct me on this, that Rebecca told Susie. So, see, it sounds to me like, how siblings have issues with each other, and you put money involved. And if they're led the wrong way and they got a father who, is obviously not the best when it comes to, if man can't rule his house, how's he going to rule the kingdom of God? And if he's cheating on his wife who loves him, how's he going to be the best father? So
horrible. I think it is the worst situation.
So
and
you imagine how they grow up. Maybe Rachel, maybe Rebecca have like issues with each other. Maybe Rebecca, maybe she, was just firing Susie up. I'm not saying that that's the case, but that's where it came from. Susie and Jonathan had no idea. Guess what? I knew. You know how? Because my daughter, who was younger than their daughter, told me who it was. So it wasn't very difficult. And it's not like you can do like a whole
So wait. Your daughter was affected by the same man?
No. This is my story. That's their story.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was like, wait, we just separated it. What are you talking about? Okay. Yeah.
My daughter told me who it was.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yes.
Okay. Came in, would have nightmares, night terrors. I had to make what we used to call a sleepy's bed. I'd make her a bed because she had to sleep next to me. Mm-hmm. And it was very obvious. And there was no way I would ever let this guy around my child again. Got a restraining order immediately.
Of course.
They didn't go to CPS right away. CPS was contacted by other people later. And then they want to put it off on, Joni said, and Joni did this. It doesn't make sense as a parent who's gone through this. If you
but were you a parent who was spiritually abused? As far as it seems to me that Marcus and Joni, it's their way or the highway, and Jonathan is a submissive kid. And when you grow up with that, it becomes a habit. So when mom says drop that, you still drop it.
You've heard the recordings, right?
Yeah.
Did you hear the recording when Joni brought up the fact that Susie created this terrible thing? And Susie, what it was and how horrible it was. And Susie snickers and doesn't say, well, he molested my child and you're covering it up. Why wouldn't she? Why would she? I
don't remember that one. I might not have heard that one.
People are like, oh, listen to this. And I'm going, well, she's bringing up that Susie. So it was clear that Susie thought something was an issue.
Right.
And she thought something was an issue with this person because Rebecca told her something. But the seed was planted. They call it the mind virus, was planted with something that happened at the school, which happened to another girl too. So there's a story that's very believable.
But then there's no men that work at the school.
Well, but I thought it was kids. Two kids. One of the kids went up.
She said it was taller than her father. She said
the story it gets so what would it say? Conflicting and strange. Mm-hmm. At one point, he was alone with the girl.
But that's exactly why it should be there. It should be taken more seriously by Joni.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Wait, hang on, but you're saying by Joni?
Yes, because I think that Joni's trying to put her head in the sand. It's, in my opinion, if I own Daystar, his daughter went from speaking about it to not speaking about it, but only after Joni was with her alone for an hour.
Well, it wasn't until later.
It was later.
She thought, what I'm saying is until later that she thought that it was somebody else because Rebecca told her, right?
I don't remember anything about that.
Yeah. In the beginning, it was all about the school. And then she got it in her head because Rebecca put it there that so-and-so acts weird around the child. And that could be the case, right? That could be the case. I'm not saying that that's not the case. But what I'm saying is if a child will say, is digitally essayed, as they said, a hymen breaks, there is evidence, and you bring them immediately to the doctor. Now, when I first heard about it, I even sent an email out. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Jonathan. Anything that I can do. I felt terrible. But then when the next day came out, and she was molested by the chiropractor who came to her house. I'm going, hang on a second.
Not the daughter.
No, Susie.
Susie, yeah.
It was the very
and the chiropractor had another. And somebody else had complained about the chiropractor.
And that's very, very good. That they should have led with that. And then they could have even gone into the whole Jimmy Evans thing about the marriage, because then it was the next day it was that. They should have never, and this is my big red flag. I was told
So when you say you have a red flag, who's the red flag on?
The red flag is 100% on Susie. 100%. Okay. And I'm going to tell you why, because, and I'm going to say Jonathan as well, because they're doing this together. This is just a red flag. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Doesn't mean that it's not true. I certainly, if something literally happened, wouldn't be hanging out, wouldn't be secretly recording and trying to give him in a gotcha moment, Doesn't sound like they were very, very scared or very, very, we'll say, like, like, sounds like they were kind of plotting and planning something to me. To me, that's what it sounds like. But the red flag was not that. The red flag was the fact that they made their daughter the centerpiece of this. Mm-hmm. Now, I was told you don't want to remind the girl of this. Now, here's the irony, is that like a year later, she began to relitigate this. And she even said, well, I don't even know what it's like to put words into a child's mouth. She even said the thing that people do, and they put it on there, and that's actually considered abuse. You know what I mean? Because now this girl, for the rest of her life, will always believe in her head that she was molested by this man. Meanwhile, they could have kept that back. They had enough. But
what do you think the end game was for Susie and Jonathan?
The end game was, now I'm willing to believe that maybe they really believed that there was an issue, and I'm even willing to believe that maybe, because Rebecca said it, even though they had no evidence, even though that this guy doesn't have any history of it, which usually you'll find, I'm willing to believe that she believed it, But if you're trying to protect your daughter, you don't put your daughter, center stage in your family drama. They had plenty to go on. So that's actually damaging. And then what happens? She's now back and forth with Rachel talking about how, the daughter has this and the daughter's constipated and has the eczema and all the stress. And what they're doing to the daughter, she's admitting is causing a physical reaction. So the question is it because she was, or because this is being pushed on her, which people do, right? I mean, if you want to be fair, many people have charged other people of committing this very crime and it not being true,
yeah, that's why I'm saying,
why would she be babysitting
you should take it very seriously.
Of course,
everyone should step back. Everyone should, and it's kind of, I do believe that when you have something like this, everyone involved has something to do with it.
Yeah.
At some level.
Well, no, I'm sure
there's different levels of complicity, but to me, like,
it's
Joni
a big
put
crime.
herself in a pinch. Joni doesn't have a way out now.
Well, let me tell you something. I think there is a way out, and I hope Jonathan and Susie are listening, because I feel like I think they were misled by a bunch of, clickbait, title grabbing, watchdogs, who, by the way, like Royce, has their own little checkered past. I don't know if you ever looked at her.
And I'm very surprised at how embracing people are of her.
Right.
When you talk about abuse, these very things about people she's interviewing, saying how disturbing it is that this person did this for so long, but then she wrote in her own book.
I know.
And so yeah, I do agree with that. And so you have to me, it is such a serious thing, and it should be handled the way yours was handled.
Well, I mean, it should be handled seriously, and most definitely not like if Joni was babysitting while they were at their event talking
and that's alleged. Remember,
it's alleged. We don't know if it's true, but
like, you're right. That is very.
I would say if I was Joni, I would have taken a picture of the kids and just posted that online and said, okay, well, they're letting me babysit the kids. But here's even better. She probably wouldn't do that. I think I put this forward to begin with, and I was mad at Joni and Daystar. I heard Marcus Rogers was getting involved, and I said, whatever you do, please don't have him on your show. I felt like God was like, you don't want to do this, And so then I see Marcus Rogers on the show, and everybody's thanking Marcus Rogers, who attacked him and tore him down. Like nobody said thank you to me. You know how much hate I got for sticking up for people that fired me? Right. Rachel Lamb didn't follow me.
Well, you weren't doing it for that reason. I wasn't. And that's why I was really comfortable with having this conversation with you, because you're one of the few people that if we disagreed, and we do on several things, we agree on others, that I felt like it wouldn't go left.
Oh God. Yeah.
And so, so I'm Joni. I don't keep Pete there. I remove Pete. And I removed Pete
until the allegations are cleared. Yeah.
Until at least like he won't even go, from what I understand, from what's been reported, he won't even finish out the third party, the forensic, psychologist or whatever she is.
I don't know. All I heard was the guy took a couple of lie detector tests. I heard that, I mean, first of all, if they were to do anything at this point in time, it's like you couldn't ever possibly prove this at this point in time. There's no way. What you could do is you could convince a little girl that she was molested when she wasn't, and now she's going to carry it for the rest of her life. She will. It'll be online. Everybody she goes to school with, everybody. That does not sound to me like parents that were thinking clearly. It sounds to me like,
and that's fair. But what you're saying, at least the way I'm hearing it, is that you're thinking they implanted it, that the little girl didn't come to them first.
No.
And that's not the way I understand it.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is at this point, there's no way to prove it. Right.
Well, there often isn't. I mean, when somebody's grooming a child, they are very careful. And
listen to the words that you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
At no point in time did they ever suspect anything until they were told. You know what a mind worm is, right? It gets into your head. You know what a lie is. I'm not saying
until they were told. You mean until their daughter came and told them?
No. It was all about the school. She said it happened at the school, and supposedly there was another girl.
No, the mother assumed it happened at the school.
No, she was told it happened at the school.
Well, I didn't hear that. And I listened to a lot of the.
That's what that they went to the school.
Yeah, no, I knew that part.
Because that's what the daughter said.
She assumed it because the daughter was only in two places.
No, that's because the daughter said it. I believe, it's been a while since I've listened. The daughter said that it happened at the school, and then she didn't know how to handle it and went to Joni for it because Joni loved her, and I guess there was a good thing. But it wasn't until later that a thought was put inside her head by Rebecca saying, "Hey, he acts weird around." This is what I've heard.
Right. So that's what they've said. They have said that part, but I disagree with the first take on it. From what I understand, the little girl comes to them. Susie thinks, okay, there's only two places this could have happened. It's either Daystar or there. So it's not Daystar in her mind. That's family. So it must have been the school. She tells Joni.
That's one way of doing it. Yeah.
They go to
I thought it was like two. I thought it was a boy that did this to two girls at the school.
So I haven't heard that piece. And that's the thing is we can't all hear everything.
I know. And that's what makes it difficult, right?
It does make it difficult.
Wrong, you could be wrong. So then what I do is I look at all of the other stuff, like you said, you were a little taken back if she was literally babysitting.
100%.
Susie cried and carried on that she was being attacked by Joni when Joni showed up to the house to give a gift to her grandchildren. I mean, she loves her grandchildren. Could you imagine? I'm saying, imagine this doesn't happen. Why has everybody jumped the shark on this when there's so many red flags along the way?
Well, and that's what my point is because there's so many, as the matriarch of the family, as the CEO of Daystar, she needs to make everyone back off. Child's most important thing. Mm-hmm. Nothing else matters until we figure this out. And that
seemed like that's what they were doing though, right?
No,
like,
she kept everyone else there. She got rid of Joni, or she got rid of Susie and Jonathan. And let me tell you.
Well, to be frank though.
I'll tell you the kind of people that record someone have been so emotionally and mentally and spiritually abused, usually, that they can't even trust themselves. And they go to other people and they go, what should I do? And the person says, well, get it on tape because then you've got proof.
Well, I agree with you there.
And I disagree with anyone that has a problem with them doing that.
No, I agree with you there. I feel like they were a victim of like Royce and company. I really do. I feel like they were encouraged and maybe they went to her to begin with. I feel like somebody said to them, this is what you got to do. And look, all of the other stuff with Jonathan, hey, if you just sign this letter and you promise me I'm going to be the president, all this can go in the past and we'll forget it. And I get the fact that at the time they didn't know, they thought he was cleared, he wasn't cleared and all this stuff. All that I understand. It's just all of it seems so sus to me. And I feel like if they were really confused and scared, she didn't think it was him, never had any thought that it was him until someone said, hey, there's your target, right? And with no proof. And the guy's never been in trouble with this, but now his life's pretty much, I mean, he's in ministry, right? So he's look at how many people are leaving now, right? And this is where lawsuits come in, because if you can't prove something and you can say something like that, then anybody who's saying that they're, you know, like that she's literally
that's why Joni should have gotten it out.
What do you mean gotten it out?
Still hasn't.
What do you mean gotten it out?
So every one of those people that are a part of the drama,
right?
If it's my business and there's a child involved, everyone's out of the building. You don't work here until we get this figured. Whatever, however you have to do it, we have to figure this out first. Well, once again, I think that that's what they tried to do right before Marcus died.
Pete's
still working there, and he's the one that's been accused.
No, then Marcus died, and then there was like this, that, and the other thing, and then she got married to Doug, and then there was a problem with it not being a biblical marriage.
Well, Joni should never have gotten married that fast.
Yeah, but once again, people. But
I also understand what it feels like because I've been there, to be somebody that's going through a divorce or whatever,
or loss.
Every woman should be like put in handcuffs until they come out of their grieving or their freak out or whatever emotional things they go through.
Once again, I just find like I could care less who my mom is marrying if my daughter was being, you all say the essay by someone nearby. And I certainly wouldn't, like, if I had thought that, but if someone tells me it's clear and I really believe it, I'm not going to let them sleep in the next room. It was clear that they felt comfortable with their daughter around him, right? And
they didn't let him sleep in the next room.
No, I'm talking about the bunk beds. Remember the whole story?
Oh, the first time it happened. Yeah.
But that was already after they thought. This was like when they were all trying to rebuild and they were trying to come back together.
So the way I understand it, the way it happened.
And I'm not an expert on the situation.
First it was the school. Then the school got cleared because there's no male working there. And she said it was a tall man, taller than Daddy.
I think Joni said that it was a girl. I mean, not a girl.
I'm just telling you this is the timeline that I know.
Right.
And so once that happened, then there's nothing you can do. There's no man that works there. Right. Then when that happened, that's when they wanted to get the third party and all the stuff. Right.
Well, that would be then, I guess, when Rebecca told Susie about all that.
Again, and I'm not really privy to that part of the story. I don't know anything about what Rebecca.
Well, someone had to point to somebody, right? So someone had to point to somebody, and that's what I think that's established. I think so. I feel like
if you're Joni, what would you do?
I feel like they were. This is what I would do if I was them. If you can ask me what I would do if I was Joni, I wouldn't be in Joni's position.
Bingo. Same. Me neither.
Right. This isn't going to be an issue. Jonathan and Susie, I feel like, they're going on this publicity tour where the whole thing is about, this terrible event that may have happened or not. No doctors concluded that it happened. The police cleared it the first time or whatever. I mean, it looks on paper like you were concerned about it. And now maybe you have somebody else that you're concerned about. There's no history. You start to look at it like that. Then you start to add in all the other stuff. They're recording behind the scenes. There's an issue with this. They have an issue with her getting married to Doug Weiss. That's not biblical. All of a sudden, that's more important than the door. So there's a lot of it that just doesn't sit right to me as somebody that's gone through it and knows how devastating it feels. Like, I still to this day don't know for sure, we had enough proof that there was stuff, like, my ex-wife left. So it wasn't, but right away CPS, right away doctor's report, right away to police, right away, all of these things.
Well, you did all the right things. They didn't.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: is it is.
I would like to ask them. Do you know for sure that it happened?
What would you do? What would you do now?
For Jonathan,
you're writing the whole story.
Yeah,
let's say you're pitching this as a movie, and how these people are going to overcome this soap opera.
I want to see the family get together. I put a subtitle called "Beauty for Ashes," and once again, I could be completely wrong.
100%.
I mean, and so could everybody else. And you just shouldn't condemn somebody of something unless you know factually it's true.
I mean, I literally have prayed for every person in that family.
And you're having me on. None of the people that are critical of Daystar and Joni would, because there's very few voices out there.
Right.
Where, and I think it's just because I know Joni wouldn't do this from what I know of her. She could have changed in 13 years.
Yeah.
I know how much she loved her children. I know how much she really cared. And I know she actually really cared about the Lord. Now there's a new thing going around where she's given a curse, right? You hear about the curse?
Well, I saw where it originated from, and the curse was against spiritual evil, not people.
Right. But what is everybody doing? She's a witch. She's this.
It is a very, I personally didn't, I would never pray like that.
You never said, Lord, anybody coming against me, please turn their arrows against them. I have. I do it all the time. Anybody who's going to say bad comments about me, Lord, let their comments bounce back on them. Right now, am I doing witchcraft, or am I, but the prayer did begin with, show us, help us to repent. Let us know what's true. She started off with a prayer of repentance and then went in. She must listen. If there are people that are leaving, there are people that are signing up. Daystar is a huge institution. It has an opportunity right now after
I don't
being
think it
broken.
does. I think it's going down.
Well, it's already down, right? So
no, I mean, I think it's going to go all the way down.
And maybe. I would like to see Jonathan and Susie and their family get back together regardless.
Right.
I believe, I know personally, that Joni is ready regardless to, she is ready right away and to let things go. There's a lot of stuff that she did wrong. I mean,
there's a lot that
everybody does wrong.
Yeah. Because whenever you have a situation, no matter,
you don't know how to handle it.
No matter who's involved, they have a part in it. Because they are involved. It's kind of like God's medicine.
Yeah.
These are the things that you have to figure out in order to come back to me.
Well, it's funny. I called, this is a correction on Daystar, 100%, right? God is doing this, whether it's true or not. Let's hope that it isn't true, right? Let's pray, God, that it isn't true, that Susie and Jonathan are just concerned and nothing ever happened, right? Let's hope, because that's what we want to be the truth. And also let's hope if it goes the other way that it's literally revealed. And I'm sure that if something like that happened, it will be revealed eventually, because someone who does something like that, they end up doing other things,
Right. Oh, for sure. And that's my concern for Joni. Like if I were working with her and I was trying to help her through this, I would be asking her hard questions. Why in the world would you put a GPS on your son's vehicle without telling him?
Right. No,
you own the vehicle. Why are you creating this
fear
network?
Fear makes you do stupid things.
Or why are we signing NDAs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes complete sense. I had to sign NDAs everywhere I've worked.
Yeah, but that's business. This is a ministry and a church, and their standards need to be higher. That's a question I have for you.
Here's a good question for you.
No, let me go first.
Sure.
I want to know when you realized, because you said you got a check and you knew that he was probably cheating on his wife, you couldn't confirm it.
Yeah.
How did you feel about working for a Christian church entity, even though you knew the man leading it was probably cheating?
Blessed. No, I actually knew he was in my heart.
Jacob, you say things, I'm like, why would he say blessed? Okay, I can't wait to hear it.
I felt blessed to be there. I mean, what a beautiful place. First of all, people make mistakes, do all sorts of dumb things, right? Yes. That doesn't mean that they're beyond redemption. And who's going to get tempted the most? The person that's given the most. They gave me a job in the field that I wanted to be in, and I knew that it was kind of like.
But you wanted to work for the Lord, and
I know it was like Jacob
wasn't there.
It's funny. It's like Jacob goes to work for Laban, because he falls in love with Rachel. And he gets there and he wakes up and he realizes, you tricked me. It's not Rachel. It's Leah. I did have that feeling when I started to have like these great revelations about the Lord and how God loves and, his mercy endures forever. And things that are just, I found to be not biblical that they believe, but that is what it is. It's a journey. And I was so happy to be there and to be a part of it. And I felt like, out of all the jobs I've ever worked, I felt most at home and comfortable there, even though there was a lot of rivalry and there's a lot of, but let me tell you, some Christians.
They're probably going to need writers.
Religious
might be able
Christians.
to walk right back in there.
No, listen, I love what I'm doing. I don't really need, to be going back there. And I live in Long Island, so I'm not planning on going to Texas.
Well, let's do this. Let's give to this spectrum, Joni, Susie, Jonathan, Rebecca, they all made the worst choices. Let's say they were really true. They all made the worst choices possible.
Right.
And tell me what your thoughts are on that. But then when you're done, think about like really the best case scenario. Like what if every person really was trying to do the best that they could? Then tell me that.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? So like let's say you're pitching a story, you're pitching me, I'm the producer and you're saying, I've got this great soap opera. It's, the Daystar turns and these guys are all like, they're ready to kill each other. Do the bad one first and we'll end on the good one.
Do the bad one first. Well, I don't want to I could definitely sensationalize this and make it out like, this is a power struggle. And if I'm not going to be president, I'm going to tear this place down. I could say that. I don't think that that's the case. I think, that there was. But
you only made Jonathan the bad one. I wanted you to make everyone the bad one. Everyone's complicit.
Oh, I'm getting.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I think that Jonathan and Susie clearly had an issue with the change of leadership. I believe that they, were concerned about their daughter. They were concerned about the position they were in. I believe that, Joni I've been into that situation where they're like, I'm the voice of God. I'm the authority. I mean, the truth is it's your boss. You got to listen to your boss, right? It is also your mother. So you want to show respect, but I could see that she was really angry with Susie. I could see that there was really tension. She was saying things like, I want to work things out. And, that's why we're here, and giving them opportunities. Like, we don't want you to be fired. We want you to, we just know that if you go and continue with this story, which it could be real, it could not be real, that it's going to be devastating. So what does a mother do? Well, how do I keep my son and my daughter-in-law from losing their job? NDA. Everybody signs them. I had to sign one when I left. That's why I can't read anything, right? I don't even know if I could get in trouble, but I had to sign one, right? I mean, when I was working for WWE, I was the head writer there.
But that's different. That's not a church.
Well, okay.
They get all the benefits of the church, so they need the standards of a church.
Well, then they things would be a lot different, because, it's very much, we'll say, a business-based organization, in my opinion.
Okay.
They are for profit as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They're for profit as well. It's not like they're all, they're tax exempt and everything else, but there's a for profit side as well.
Okay.
So they're definitely a business. I mean, and Marcus was a real savvy businessman. Jonathan was like, a crack business guy too. I feel like the loss of the father, trauma can change things. They can change an entire family dynamic. So you have that happen. Then you have this new guy that's in the picture, and people like, we don't really know him that well. And at first everybody's lovey-dovey and everything's great. Oh, you look so great together. But the instant they're getting married, there's a big problem. And that could be the case, right? But they all did things wrong because they were all acting out of fear and anger and pride. Everybody, all of them. On all sides, right?
It really would be the bad one would be a really good soap opera.
Yeah. They already have it on HBO,
right?
But I feel like they got taken a little bit in by this. And I think that they had a lot of people encourage them to go public. Like if I would have been like, oh my God, you got so much. You want to make the New York Times? Let's go with the Jimmy Evans. Let's go with the biblical marriage. Let's go with the masseuse. Don't bring your daughter into it, because what that does is it says that you don't really care too much about your daughter in the future. You do that behind the scenes.
Yeah, but what if it's the best case scenario and it really did happen, and
that would be the worst, but yeah.
No, I'm saying like if everyone is like doing their best intentions, and that, right, you know, in the scenario I mentioned earlier.
Oh, so you're saying like what if they I just don't think they I don't think they thought it through. I think they're young and they're angry. As I was when I wrote my letter. I was fuming, you know, and but I didn't sue him, you know. Like when David, here's the other thing too, is all these, you know, YouTube channels. You know, God gave Daystar the influence that it has. Here comes all these other influencers ready to, you know, tear down Daystar, which is fine. I have no problem with it. I have my own channel. I'm not worried about the outer court. You know what I mean? It's like I'm doing my own thing. Let the world be the world. But David, when he was given the opportunity, like I could have made things difficult. I got let go right after their lawsuit. I could have made it look like it was like a retaliation type of thing. I could have. I'm not a dumb guy, but I didn't do that because I knew that that wasn't what the Lord wanted. You don't touch, you know what I mean? Like they didn't really wrong me that much. I was working out of New York. I was lucky I got the years I did. And do you know, this is another thing, how much they care about the kids. You know, they gave me like $3,000 for legal fees when it was with my daughter, with all that stuff. Okay. They didn't have to do that. There's like I said, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad. And
that's, you know, every human.
Joni's feeling her way out. She's new to this right now. She had somebody who did things the wrong way for so long. I think she's learning from it. I think she
got very, very bad advice.
And so did Jonathan and Susie, in my opinion. What I would do if I were them, you want to talk about family, coming back together, saying, you know what?
Give me the best case scenario.
Best case scenario is they realize that the only way that this works tangibly in the future is to really go to God and pray and say, you know, and really ask yourself, do you really believe that happened? Was some of it manipulated? Was any of what you did motivated by anger? And were you doing things to hurt your mother? Because in all honesty, you can't blame Joni for covering something up. They had no problem revealing it.
I don't know what you mean. Like I would completely, if I believed that my mother-in-law shut down the third party thing and said, in agreement with dad, guess what? Crops. It's done. And you trust your mom and dad and they cover it up.
Yeah.
That's illegal.
Well, they didn't, I don't think they covered anything up though.
But my point is that they told him that the third party investigation had been completed.
Oh, was it Marcus?
And Marcus and Joni.
Okay.
That it was cleared and everything's done. Leave it alone. And I think that
so they was trying to like put it behind. They were like,
I believe that Jonathan and Susie believed Marcus and Joni. I think that Susie helped Jonathan get wily to the fact that you might have a little bit of too submissive to mom.
Right.
And I think that this is what
I mean, she said that thing about the balls. That was like, she's got you by the balls. I mean, it's like, but you ever meet my mother? Has your mother ever said anything to you that's not great? Doesn't realize you're being recorded?
No, my mom was an angel. My dad did.
Oh God. But you know, my point is like, I listened to all the tapes and I thought that's the best that they have. It's not great, but it would have been enough to sink Daystar and make them look bad if you left the daughter out. Because now what it does is it calls into question a lot of other things. You know, like why didn't you go?
Well, and that's what I'm saying about keeping them at Daystar. To me, anyone that's a question mark, it's kind of like when a cop is being investigated in a killing, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to say that this cop is guilty if he's not. Right. That's a horrifying thing to do. So what you do is you say you're done. You get to go home, you get to keep your paycheck, but we're investigating this fully, and then we'll make our decisions.
Now, here's another question. What if it was what Joni said, and it was about some boy at the school that put his hand up 2 girls' dresses, and it was resolved, and it was never a real issue, and the police said it wasn't an issue, and it wasn't a real issue, and Joni knew it wasn't a real issue, And then it only became an issue later when all this stuff starts to bubble up. Then would she, I mean, if she knew, like I'm saying, if Joni really knew that not, like she said, nothing happened, right?
Well, here's the thing though, is if Joni complied with Marcus or was in on it, which they believe that she was, that's the pickle she got herself into.
Right. No, I agree. Listen, I agree. I don't
think when you continue to cover it up and you keep the guy at work,
I find a whole thing with the therapist I find it all so odd to me, because I'm just thinking as a parent who went through this myself. And I mean, listen, you could have a point. You could have a point with the fact that, they're not the voice of God when she's literally talking, but they were the voice of God a month earlier. I mean, maybe that's a point, right? Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that they're recording everything.
Absolutely. And support that 100%. I think anyone being emotionally abused should record.
Yeah. Well, I agree. But you can hear them knowing that they're recording and trying to get their mom to say things. You could hear it. And it was like devastating. That's your mother.
Yes, but it's a mother that covered up probably the worst.
Hang on a second. You're saying that covered up like it's a fact. You don't know that she covered anything up.
Yes, because she's even said that Marcus told them that it was closed down.
That's Marcus, right?
And
he said that
she's not around. She doesn't know that's why they went on trips together afterwards. And here I want to disclaimer. This is just me based on things that I've watched. Yeah.
We're just talking. I don't know all of it. And I know that this is like, I could imagine how terrible it would be if I really thought that. First of all, I would have never gone public with it. I don't know what YouTuber or reporter is going to say, yeah, let's put your daughter front page. That's what sells. Who's thinking of the little girl? Nobody's thinking of the little girl at all. That's where they get back together. They blame these, crackpot reporters that not only took an axe to the idea of what Christianity, used to be, which is probably God ordained. I'm not arguing with it. Happened for a reason, right? God does these things for a reason. He gave the foxes, Samson put the fire, the torches with the foxes, and the foxes went and burnt it all down. Let it be burnt down. Maybe now they can start again. Maybe Joni can be more remorseful. I don't know what needs to be done. If she's literally babysitting while they're at this event, that I think.
Right, so then that gets my mind going, okay, they're all in on it together. Maybe it's we're going to take it from cable to,
well, I don't know about, I doubt, right? Not a documentary. I don't think that they would do, I don't think that
the only reason that one comes to my mind is because they all call him Pete instead of the people who believe he's guilty of something saying who it is.
Remember when Jesus was talking to Pete, you know what he said to him? He goes, Peter, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. Satan asked to sift Peter like wheat. Right now, they're being sifted. This is what the devil does. The disciples say, they're not listening. We try everything. Turn that one over to Satan for the destruction of their flesh, so the spirit may be saved on the day of the Lord. All this stuff can make Daystar stronger, better, more humble.
I disagree.
It can show it. Well, I'm saying with God, everything's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
Well, that's true. With God, it's all possible. Yeah. But I can't imagine
a family can come together.
God would bless this.
Well, no, he's definitely not blessing it. What I'm saying is what God can do is if all of them decide, to make amends, come to terms with
I think that's the top best thing that could happen, but I think it has nothing to do with all the other. I think they have been so massively exposed with the insurance stuff, buying, elderly people's insurance and
oh, you're talking about Daystar. Yeah, that stuff's been going on forever. That's all these ministries, they do this
horrifying.
Yeah,
I mean, just the fact that people go, oh, this is normal.
But once again, private business enterprise.
That's not fruit. That's not fruit. Yeah. That's not fruit. That is using the church to do a nonprofit business, which is
hey, listen,
very unscrupulous.
You're not going to listen. I don't know the ins and the outs of their business. I'm only here to talk about.
Yeah, they need to go. She needs to just be happy she has money, and she needs to walk away into the sunset and just go enjoy her marriage that she got herself into.
Yeah. It's sad. It's sad what they're all going through.
And really, the best thing that could happen is they can find closure on this. I do believe there is an investigation going on. Finally, I think that I heard.
Well, that would be good. That's good.
Yes.
That's
and
good.
I don't know. I haven't, I've not called Colleyville Police Department to verify. Right. So this isn't the channel for news, guys. This is just the channel for learning about your experience at Daystar, which, according to you, has been wonderful. And
listen, I will say that, there were times that I was scared. There was time. I've been in the position where I'm called into the office and I wish I had a recording device, kind of a deal. I had Shannon Kelly, I used to love Shannon Kelly. He's a nice guy. I think he's the guy that did the whole thing, or he was the guy that was teaching him how to shoot the gun or something. Shannon. He's awesome,
okay.
Dude.
I did see that video. Yeah.
I haven't seen these guys in a long time. I'm surprised he's head of security, but he was always such a great guy, Shannon. I dug him. But I remember Shannon being there when I had to talk to Joni before I ended up sailing off into the sunset and to sell mattresses and grow a YouTube channel. Isn't it amazing what God can do?
It really is.
And then here I am full circle coming, to a point where you're not going to hear, my colleagues who've had issues come, and it's just that I'm grateful that God placed me there. I'm grateful for these people.
Well, I also think you're more of a positive person.
I like to think the best.
You're not bitter. I'm the same way. I'm not a bitter person. Like nothing. I won't let Satan have that kind of power over me ever again. And so to me, it's always better to just really and truly hope to God that they can turn it around. Right. And if they just walk towards God, they can fix at least the most important thing after their relationship with God, and that is their family.
I'm telling you, these Royce and the crew, they should have said, look, we got enough evidence. We don't need to bring your child into it. I think they were taken advantage of. I think they were exploited.
Yeah, but Jacob, talk about a den of vipers.
Yeah.
Dallas, have you seen how many pastors are being taken out, arrested, stepping down?
Yeah, the whip.
It's unbelievable. Exactly.
It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing.
And so when you keep that in mind, and that this is some sort of hub for that,
right.
It's an unbelievable and unhealthy amount of it.
Right.
So you have to take these things seriously. And if Joni does have the heart that you're saying she does, she needs to say, guess what? Everybody's out. We're all going to go get the best of the best to figure this out. And we're going to go back to God, all of us, whatever that takes. And our family is going to be the number one thing. She's got enough money to survive for the rest of her life. She should not care
I had that problem.
What happens to Daystar.
Right.
She should not care because
she's
not giving a good example of Christianity around the world.
Well, listen, once again, you talk about spiritual abuse. Marcus was the head of that family, right? So I think, and my hope, and I am positive. My hope and is that they're all going to learn from this. My hope is that, if Jonathan
honestly, isn't that what we all just want? Just
I know, but it's hard though when you get a lot of
know why you're sorry, know what you did, talk about how it's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
And then get out there and do things for the Lord. But I don't think you belong leading anymore.
Right. Well, tell that to David, tell that to name them all, tell it to Solomon. People, tell it to Jonah. He didn't even want to listen. If God places somebody where they're supposed to be, they're going to be there, or they're not. I
think we're coming into a new era, and people are learning to discern through all of the things that have happened in the last 5 years. And I think the church is being the first to be exposed. I think the people are learning that there is a fruit and that insurance things shouldn't be attached.
Oh, of course not.
Profit shouldn't be attached to nonprofit.
The Vatican. I mean, you want to talk about, you know, what we're talking about, you want to talk about covering up abuse. That's obvious.
And I agree with that 100%. But what I'm saying is it's a new day. And I think this is grassroots led. And in some cases, it could be people with nefarious reasons. But God uses it for good because he's teaching people how to know what the fruit of the Spirit is.
Yeah.
And the fruit of the Spirit is not a man that cheats on his wife under her nose for 7 freaking years.
Yeah, I know.
To the point of saying, and then what happened to that woman?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. Listen, once again, I'm not arguing that, right? This is literally about this one thing and this one family that I knew and the opportunity that's there if they can get beyond this. Because I think that Jonathan and Susie feel like that's it. You know, there's no coming back home for that. I've had fractures in my family that were brutal. Things that I'll never even share publicly because out of respect for my mom. My mom had me when she was 19. I was single father. I was a poor kid. Didn't have a dad growing up. And then I became a single full-time dad with these 2 children. And one of them's in harm's way, you know, and you don't know what you're going to do. So you put your faith in God and it all works out.
It does.
But I've been in fractures where you think that, you know, there's no coming back, but it takes really just one person to say, okay, let's let the truth come out and let's forgive each other and let's give each other the benefit of the doubt. You know, like we all did the best that we could. I can understand why Joni would act the way they did. I can understand why Jonathan.
I completely understand why all of them act the way that they are.
I think they both did wrong. I want to be very clear. I think what they did, both of it, it's, you know, I think Joni knew that the ship was sinking with her son. I think she was desperate. And I think that maybe she resorted to some tactics and they tried to, like, you know, bully, but not knowing that the whole time they were being one up, that they were being recorded the whole time.
Right.
Which, like, if you want to expose an organization,
which they did try to prevent. So,
of course.
Okay, let's do this because I know that you are on a time schedule.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I'm loving this. This is good.
Okay, so what I would like to hear before we close is I'm going to name a name and you're going to say, this is the advice specifically I have for them, but it has to be in love. You have to say it in love.
It's the only way I got it.
I know, but I just was saying.
All right, go ahead. I'm ready.
Extra love on top.
Extra love.
Okay, so let's start with the one that you have the red flag on, Susie.
When you get something in your mind and you think it is something horrible, you know, you gotta own that. You gotta do everything that you can. Clearly, in this position, Susie, you were, tossed around. It seemed like you're young, and it seemed like you really, really loved Joni, and you really, really wanted to serve the Lord, and really wanted to do the right thing. I think that, you know, fear and a lot of manipulation kind of surrounded this whole event. And I think that you need to know that if you really believed it, you're justified in what you did. Mm-hmm. You know, forget about what I said. You shouldn't have done this. You probably did what you thought was the best. Okay. I'm willing to believe that. You could only do, here's the best part, Susie, you could only do what the Lord allows you to do. So that means that it was God ordained that this comes out the way it did.
Right. And it will be used for good.
Right. The good that could come out of this is if there's any part of you that thinks that maybe he didn't do that. If there's a little room for maybe he didn't do that. Maybe what you can do is say, hey, can we forgive each other? Can we start fresh? And make sure that guy's never around your child again. I mean, you know, you can have a relationship, even if you don't believe that really he did it. It's clearly you seem to. But even if there's like room for doubt, still, you don't have to ever have them around again. But you can have a relationship with Joni again. Jonathan, Marcus and your mom built this for you, right? You don't think that your mom wants you to come? Your mom wants you to come back. I really hope that she was babysitting. I hope that you had enough trust to allow her to babysit. I haven't been around in a long time. I do know how wonderful Jonathan is. I do know how wonderful Joni can be. I don't know Susie. And I feel bad because a lot of people, very few people on the other side, but the people that are on the other side, like myself, are making it out like she's, manipulating Jonathan and everything else. And that may not be the case. When you're scared, you make mistakes.
Yes.
Now, Susie, if you are making up stories and you really don't believe this, own it. Say, you know what? I thought the worst. I'm sorry it got this far. Own it. Because repentance is just admitting when you're wrong and then letting it go. Clearly, it would be better to have your family together again.
Yeah.
Clearly,
so let me do Susie.
Sure.
Susie, I know that this has rocked your world. I believe that you care deeply. If I'm wrong, then you are a horrible person, but I think I'm right. And what I would say is take at least 6 months to focus just on your family. Stop talking to reporters, just focus on your family. Heal, sit quiet with the Lord. You are the matriarch of your tiny little new family, and it is a beautiful family, and God wants your family to heal. Help your family heal. Give it everything you've got. All right. So, and then Jonathan.
That was really good, by the way.
Thank you.
That was really good.
Thank you. And Jonathan, I think that you seem to be a very kind person. I co-sign completely on you taping them. I think that it was necessary in order to prove the invisible. Right. But I do think that you need to have so you need to get better at using your voice as a man.
Right.
And that way you don't have to use manipulation, because a lot of times when people have been abused or things have happened, they do things in different ways because they don't know how to just be direct.
Right.
And he's got the power, and he absolutely should use it. And again, if he's guilty of anything, and I would say too, protect your little girl. I know Madison Marquette is very upset that they put pictures of their daughter out online. And I do agree with her. I think at this point in time, it's a good time to pull back for a little bit, let your family cloister, get safe in the little cocoon of just your family, and let your daughter have space without, being public. And this is just my opinion. I this is just my advice if I was doing it. So now do Joni. What advice would you give to Joni?
Oh, well, can I do Jonathan too?
Oh, I thought you did Jonathan.
No, I did just.
I thought you were doing it together.
I think I did.
You kind of did. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Jonathan, I guess what you said, Carmen, was so great. I mean, you should be, listen, as a father, this is the worst thing that you can do for your young child, to continue to bring this up and to continue to relitigate it. I believe that you're doing the best that you can. And I think that maybe if you take Carmen's advice, you focus on your family, like that really should be, what's going on. This is now going on for months, and it's like every day it's the same thing, and I'm hearing the same thing. And that's the reason why I wanted to talk to you about it, because it's almost like I want to see this family grow. Like they're not going to be whole and healed until they can put this behind them. It is already behind them. They need to come to terms with it. They don't have any literal proof. They have an idea. So you got to pray about it, Jonathan. You got to really ask, you got to search your heart. Do you really think something like that happened? Was there literal evidence of it? And if you think to yourself, well, maybe we went a little overboard because we love our child, maybe we listened to the wrong people and we went public and we really should have kind of held that back. It's okay. You did the best you could, right? But now, maybe you shouldn't be leaving them home and going to speak at conventions and everything else. Maybe now you focus on how do we get this family right again, right? Because you don't want your daughter to grow up having these issues where she's not going to want to date boys, or she's going to have an issue around men. And she's, it's not good to reinforce this behavior. When they're young, that's what I was told. And I went through it. And I can tell you, my daughter, who's 21, is in a really healthy relationship with a great guy. She's in one of the top universities for medicine. It's over here. I'm not telling anybody, so no one doxes me. And all honors, scholarships, beautiful, smart, funny. She lived her life not having to carry that. Like she knows something happened, she doesn't know what, right? And if we put her through it and we brought her through, because a court case could take forever to prove. And then, what you have is, I went through getting custody of my children, and we had a forensic evaluator, and I always told my children, I said, always tell them the truth. Always just say the truth. Whatever the truth is, if he asks you a question, say the truth. If they ask you, this happened, you tell them what really happened. This is what I told Noah when he was young. This is what I told Charles. I was like 2 or 3 at the time. And that really meant a lot, because there are a lot of parents that will coach children to say certain things. And you certainly don't want to allow that to happen. I'm not saying it's happening.
Right.
Try to get your family together, try to protect your child, and try to call your mom and say, where can we go from here? Is there some way maybe that we can, because this is your legacy too. Is there some way maybe we can come back in and we can, rebuild? And both of you, Joni, Susie, Jonathan, if that's the case, and you can make sure that you're compartmentalizing the other group, make sure that they're never around or whatever else until whatever you need to do in private is established. But at least you can work on your relationship with your mom. You can accept that she is married now. And you may have your ideas on what's a biblical marriage or not, but maybe you need to support your mom. Look at Doug. He doesn't look good. He looks like he's putting on weight. I could tell the stress of everything's, crushing them all. It's like, sometimes you got to forgive people. They didn't treat you right, Jonathan, right? I heard the way they were talking to you. It was wrong. It was insulting. And, that's now public. Okay. But guess what? We all do things that we make mistakes of. Consider that, maybe your mom wasn't in the most best place in her head. Maybe she was really concerned that this was going to blow up and become what it's become. I think she's going to forgive you. I have no doubt that she would forgive you, because you know what? I think she feels bad. I really do. I feel like Joni feels bad. I just got that vibe from just the short answers I got when I emailed her that time. It wasn't about like, the truth is going to come out. It was like, please pray for my family. We really need it, And I know through Lane, who I reached out to and finally got back to me after years, if not, because I was kind of like chopped liver to them after all the stuff went down with the last time around. But we got to forgive. We got to move on. I know.
Oh, you don't have to forgive unless.
That's right. You don't have to.
Honest and true within you. It's very difficult to do so, but it serves each person to forgive.
Sure.
But also you can't really forgive somebody that's not sorry. And
right. See,
let's go to Joni.
I would say, I feel like she is sorry. I feel like she does feel bad. I would say from the videos I've watched since, I see more remorse and sorrow coming out of there than I do in the other camp. If I'm being honest, I feel like there's a lot of anger and a lot of resentment and a lot of attacks. I don't feel like anybody's feeling bad for this. Is, the grand.
Well, have you ever seen a narcissist work?
Sure.
They seem like the nice one.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying here's the thing is, I definitely don't think she looks like the nice one.
Yeah.
I feel like she realizes
I thought that's what you were saying.
No. I feel like Susie and Jonathan, I feel like Susie is on top of her game. I feel like she's getting control. I think, she's strong. She's got a big support system. Most of them have blocked me because I've asked questions instead of like talking about it.
Well, that's why I wanted to have this conversation. I think that a lot of people need to mature to where they can disagree with an adult and not hate each other and not hate them. And so that's why I was kind of excited about this. I would say to Joni, it all stops with you. And I'm sorry your husband died, but that means it's you, not you and him anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think that you brought not just a man into the family, but you brought him into the seat where their father used to be. And that would be the first thing that if I'm working with her, I would say, Joni, you need to get Doug off the camera. He's not looking that good anyway, like you said. He looks sick. But I don't want to beat up on Doug either. I'm not a fan, but they've already married. What are you going to do? Divorce? And I don't know how you fix it. Right. But what I would tell Joni to do is to make her family the most important thing after God. Same thing I said to Susie, but here's the caveat. She is the leader of the family. She has to take the masculine role of doing the hard things. And that hard thing means Doug's not in this. That just made it 100 times worse, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm his kid and I'm her kid and I've been with her forever, and this guy comes in and takes my dad, it's bad enough that this new guy's here and none of us wanted to be a part of it.
Trauma.
But then you're going to put him in the seat. Yeah. And then the person's going, well, if she'll put him in the seat, well, what if he gets it and I don't? And it was my dad's inheritance to me. It's like if somebody is worth 100 million.
I got you. I get it.
And when they die, the money goes to the mother. But then if the mother marries a snake, and I'm not saying he's a snake, I'm saying if a woman marries a snake, that guy will do everything he can to get that 100 million. And those kids who've been there from the beginning, with the dad's intention was to get it to them. It happens all the time. Yeah. I work in a financial world. Yeah. And so when you have that kind of really big stakes, you have to be the man. You have to be the one that the buck stops with Joni, not Doug. And he needs to be out until her little unit figures their stuff out.
Well, you know what's funny? Is that we're all talking about the marriage. We're not talking about the child here, because really you're right. This was the big issue, was the marriage. It seems secondary to me. And that's another reason why I was like questioned it. But here I can understand almost why Joni did what she did. And I can almost understand why she would put Doug there so quickly. And I also think Joni's smart enough to make sure that agreements are written before they get married and everything else. Where, I mean, I guess they assured them that this isn't going to happen. They assured them. But I mean, you still worry, you still think the worst. And then if, you're getting write-ups and you're getting this, that, and the other thing, it becomes a lot more awkward. But I can understand why she would do something like that, because for years she had Marcus with her. And it's like losing a limb,
I understand. That's why I said she has to get her masculine. She has to, right.
She
needs to buck up. She's the one that needs to get the ball.
But to be frank though, and also in TV, if I'm watching Daystar, I don't want to watch Joni and Jonathan. I want to watch Joni and her husband. I mean, that's the truth. So for television,
I don't want to watch Daystar at all.
Well, I don't. Yeah, that's another thing. That's a whole other thing.
I'd rather watch your show, Jacob.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I don't really watch much TV anyway. I'm always working. But I'm saying that if I was to be the writer and the producer of the show, because husbands and wives, especially newlyweds, a lot of people can glean from that. You see the on-air back and forth. You learn from it a lot. Most people are married. They can discuss their lives. It's a talk show. It's a morning talk show. No one really wants to see mommy and her son, you know, when they're watching.
I disagree.
Like,
I think people love.
Well, I think it's great to have the kids on. Yeah.
Relationships in podcasts and shows. I had a show with my daughter. People loved it.
Well, yeah, I understand that. I'm talking though. This is like the Daystar celebration show that was headed by a husband and a wife.
Right.
You know, and now that's not the case. And so I can understand why she would want that back.
Yeah. And the other advice I would have for Joni is that she's in a dinosaur situation. She either has to become the fruit, literally the fruit of the spirit. She needs to get that checklist out and she needs to embody that, because people aren't tolerating this stuff anymore. Fleecing old ladies for money. I'm sorry, giving your money. I mean, having the telethons, all of that. It is.
Well, I mean, Jonathan and Susie put out a GoFundMe.
From what I understand, they took it down immediately, and then somebody else put one up.
But what I'm saying is that you have to, the ox is worthy of its hire, right? I don't make that much money on YouTube, but it sustains me.
So you're not hearing what I'm saying. It's a new era, right? And the grassroots people are waking up. They're even if she were to keep going, it's dwindling.
Oh, for sure. You need to
the kind of people that are going to be sending them money. Yeah, that's going away.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, you know, to me, it's going to be God's medicine all around for everyone.
You know what I would do?
You know what? The faster they embrace their medicine, whoever's medicine it is, they all have different medicine that they're getting. The faster they can become contrite,
right,
and just fess up. I mean, that's literally, I don't understand why guilty people don't just fess up, because all of us are like, oh, phew, that's what we needed. We just needed reality.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to live in this fake world. Everything's fine when it's not. It's not fine. That Christian channel stuff, it's dark. All of them, TBN, all of them. They're
not going to be, they're not going to be watching it as much anyway, because most people are online. So they're watching through YouTube, or they're watching, you know, on whatever platform that they're watching on. You don't really need to go to cable much anymore, you know, but there are a lot of people that still do. And, so like when a lot of people are pulling their stuff, they're like, why are we spending the money when we're getting this many views on you? Why are we spending the money? Who watches TV anymore? Right. So that's where I see Daystar going. Like, they need to pivot into becoming a television production company. Like when I was there, I created a cartoon with Lane and Justin. I wrote it and created the whole thing, and then they executive produced it, and it's called Captain Macaroni, and it was awesome. And
Captain Macaroni.
And I got to tell you something. Captain Macaroni came out before like Jake and the Neverland Pirates or something came out. It was a sea adventure. And my point is that they should be a TV studio. They should be cranking out television shows, you know, because they have the finances and everything else to do that. Because what's going to happen is stations are going to go by the wayside, especially when you have everybody on your phone. You don't need a station.
And especially, like I'm saying, I'm telling you, people's standards are higher. They aren't going to work for a place that wants them to sign an NDA. People are not going to put up with a guy who works for a church but is cheating on his wife.
No, I know, it's horrible.
And so I look forward to it ending. And here's the thing: is she can't fix it the way she's doing it, so it has to fall, and no one else can take it because she owns it.
I think Jonathan and Susie are the only ones that can really make this whole thing right. I think that they're the only ones. I think they hold the keys to it, because I think Joni would be open.
They need.
Once again, I don't know Joni that well. This is just from like an intuition, and maybe just being the hopeful person that I am. I don't know. There are a lot of villains on all sides, I guess, but really they're all victims of their own.
Hey, we're literally all here in God's little playground, God's green earth, and we're all here, and we're either walking away from the light or walking towards it. And I highly suggest everyone walks towards it. And I really want to encourage everyone listening, stop accepting leadership that compromises.
Sure. Yeah, don't.
That's my last word.
Don't.
Thank you so much for coming.
No, listen, it means a lot to me. I'm glad I came on. I encourage some of these watchdog groups. And I do feel like they're very, very heavy-handed. And I think that they also don't leave the opportunity that there could be other things, like the devil could be messing with this family for a reason, sent to sift you like wheat, Pete. Think about this. It's just strange that that's even the name. But I've encouraged them. I said, I never see you, sharing anything that's uplifting. I always see you pointing out this guy is evil and this girl is evil. I don't see any ministry, but you say you're in the ministry. So I see like a lot of people there that
who are you talking about?
I'm just talking about a lot of YouTubers that cover this,
yeah. I've been pretty happy with the coverage of it. I think that, once we finally get to the bottom of it, a lot of people might be surprised.
Well, I think so. I think more than you think.
Yeah. And maybe we'll come back and it'll either be, oh, Jacob was right. Carmen was right. She was right about this. He was right about that.
You know what? I think that God's going to be right. It's
all for us.
I like to leave the room open for the possibility that someone isn't covering up their granddaughters. I like to leave like just the door, and then then when I start to look at everything else, I start to think, well, maybe they're being manipulated, twisted. Maybe they're being encouraged to come without, maybe they were told that we need people to know about your daughter when they really had so much already. Like, I believe they would have had better, like, New York Times and fake news, whatever you want to call them. It depends on who's listening, right? I think that more organizations would have picked it up if they left that out, because the story from all of it, and if you look at the evidence, it just doesn't seem consistent. But you could be right. This could be they were so manipulated and everything else. They just didn't do things right. They didn't know any better. I don't know. I hate the whole thing.
I grew up with a lot of rich kids, and their parents aren't as on the spot as they think they are.
No, I know. I agree.
Yeah. I also worked at a Rolls Royce dealership, and you just see that when somebody has money, whatever eccentricities they have, they get amplified.
True. Because
they've got more energy towards it, more momentum towards it, and it just. The weird gets weirder and the good gets really good. They gave you $3,000, but, and so when you have so much, it sometimes is a curse. It really is. And I've talked to so many therapists that say that it's harder to work with a billionaire's kid than it is a kid from the ghetto.
Well, I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah. I wouldn't doubt it.
And I'm not saying they're billionaires, but you know what I'm saying.
I've, like I said before, I've worked for many powerful people. I've worked for, Vince McMahon. I've worked for, Cedric Kushner. I've worked for them. And you're right. They do present an air that is, I'm above you, I need an armor bearer, stuff like that. But on the flip side of the coin,
well, it just that's why humility is so important. And that's why it's really important to be able to say, I'm sorry. And it's really important for you and I to disagree, but agree. And if we don't have these conversations, then more people can be hurt. And that's what I care about.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want more people being fleeced. I don't want more people learning from people who don't even have their own stuff together.
Right. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And then the question remains, can we even learn from a donkey though?
Can learn from it.
Can God use a donkey? Can God use a donkey?
Mosquitoes can teach us lessons.
I'll listen sometimes, I listen to, I listen to big time preachers sometimes, and I can get, God can inspire me through anybody. No one's perfect. Paul prayed 3 times. I want this gone. I want this thorn gone. Gone. And he's like, my grace is sufficient. But he used Paul, sinner, who was more worried about the cares of the world, deceitfulness of riches. That's what the thorn is.
Here's the thing: is the new era we're in. We need more grace. We need more grace for ourselves.
Yeah, that's true.
And we need more discernment on others, because I think a lot of very good people are being crushed by the machine. And so they need to just stay in their Bibles.
It seems like Daystar is being crushed. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like the power of the internet, once things live on there,
yeah,
like you said, you see it falling. It doesn't.
I actually see
being.
There's no way out unless she were to sell it.
Jonathan and Susie.
I don't even see that working.
You know,
they've got a huge mess, and you know, it's interesting because at first, I was all in on Susie and Jonathan, but when I started seeing her posting her daughter, it rubbed me wrong only because of Madison. I wouldn't have thought of it, but because I know people that have been through that, and they say they don't want that.
It's like the worst thing in the world to do.
And here's the thing. Susie doesn't know that maybe. And that's so now she does. We've said something publicly. Maybe now she'll consider, pulling it out, stop putting those pictures up or, take them down or whatever. But I do think that we're in such a time that is exciting. And I believe it's going to move faster and faster like it has been. I've never seen the news like it is, like every 2 seconds or something out. I mean, I think right now the Epstein files are supposed to drop while we were on here, right?
Wouldn't that be cool? Now, this is something that I think that the truth needs to come out. The whip, the scene where he brings in and he turns over the temple, all the money changers. That's the big thing with The Chosen this year. And I don't even watch The Chosen, but I had this vibe that the whip was coming, right? The whip is coming. The whip is coming. And I put this out, and then I saw The Chosen. That's how it's starting. He goes into the temple. He said, you turned it into a marketplace. And then the thing with Daystar happens. I'm like, oh, shoot, the whip is here. I want to see people, come back from it. I want to see
them. The whip was particularly because of hypocrites.
Well, yeah, of course.
And that's what Daystar, I mean, literally all those people, 60 programmers, and they're all rolling in it, and they're taking their jets everywhere. And there's homeless people, there's hungry people, there's people getting out of jail that don't have cars, there's single mothers, there's just everybody trying their best to get groceries. Like, come on, you cannot say you're working for God and live like that. You just can't.
Well, I mean, but they do. They all.
And that's why it's going down. I don't think it's going to be allowed anymore.
Look at the guy who's in charge of Doge. He, our government gave him tax money like $20 billion.
Oh my gosh!
To go to Mars.
Get me started on him.
But my point is that it's like it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's not just in the church. I noticed that was the case. I do know working from them that they believe that they're doing God's work. They believe that, I would do things differently. Look, my wife has a nicer car than me. I don't think I need to have a nice car. She's like, I'm 50 years old. I've never had a nice car. I want to have a nice, and we got a nice car. I said, the Lord will provide.
I love that.
It was amazing, but I got a Kia. I got the cheapest car. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that, just because people do things differently, let's hope that they care. I think right now they have an opportunity to revamp and really rededicate themselves to the Lord. And I hope that they take it on all sides. I hope Jonathan and Susie and Joni and the whole crew, and I hope something good comes out of it. And I believe that God can have something good come out of it. I don't know what it is.
The light needs to be separated from the dark, and it's very tangled. And they would need a very particular type of strategy to do that. But the most important thing is for Joni to get a hold of that family. She doesn't have the reins on it at all.
I hope that maybe they watch the show and maybe they think, maybe we can make our family whole again. Now, look, if she babysat though, then that gives me, I'm not like, forget about them. They're jerks. I'm thinking that's great. That's progress.
Yeah, if it's true, I don't know. It's alleged.
Progress. It may not be. It may not be, but that's progress if that's the case. Let's say that that's progress, that they're trying to make it and work it out.
Right.
Listen, they're examples of the Lord too. They need to act like Christ would act too. And if we're supposed to forgive even our enemies, then we need to forgive our mom.
Matriarch, buck stops there.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Just like it stops for you with the money. You got to take care of your girl, Yeah. And I'm glad you are like that. I think that's wonderful.
I love my family so much.
And so tell me this, how do people find you?
Oh, YouTube, Jacob Israel, go to YouTube. don't go to Google or anything else for whatever reason. It's very difficult to find me anywhere else. But if you go to YouTube and you type in Jacob Israel, I don't know if you could put like a YouTube link.
I already did.
Oh,
I have in the description box, I put your YouTube, I put your Twitter. I refuse to call it X. And I put a link to your book too.
Oh, yeah, my novel, The Calling, yeah. You know, I don't know though. I could be completely wrong, and I've been praying a lot about this. I've kept quiet on the Daystar thing for a while because, I mean, I'm telling you, they're ravenous. What they do is then they attack me, and they'll say that I'm a guy who's covering for an essay cover or whatever. And I'm going, no, I'm not. I'm just asking questions, and I'm saying, let's not like say that people are the worst possible people on the planet if you don't know for sure yet.
All right, let me tell you this. If I'm in a family and somebody accuses me of that,
oh my God, it'd be horrible.
I pull myself back. I do anything they ask me to do.
Like take lie detectors.
I go talk to forensic people. I do whatever they want me to do to make it right. Yes, I do. And I sure as heck don't push anything, you know.
I don't know if I would have taken a lie detector, to be honest.
I think lie detectors are setups. I don't trust them. I don't
trust them. That's the reason. Yeah. So I'm surprised, you know.
They definitely aren't. And
let's hope nothing happened. Let's hope this is a big misunderstanding, and let's hope that, like my suspicion, they got a little taken advantage of by these, you know, this watchdog organization. I'm not going to even name, you know, her or whatever. I feel like she took advantage, and but I could be wrong.
So maybe that's where your big red flag is.
Well, that was the, you know, like I said.
This goes back to Joni too. None of this would have happened had Joni handled all of this correctly from the beginning.
Right. Not bringing Jimmy Evans.
Not
bully with the whole thing with the, you know,
horrifying.
Like, oh, you have a problem, Jonathan, advisors. If you have a problem, Jonathan, if you have a problem signing this NDA, okay, you don't need to sign it. What can we do to work this out? That's what I would do as a parent. And I would never give my kid an NDA, but I understand.
There's 3 people on the board and you surprise them with a brand new person on the board.
Strange.
I mean, there's so many, honestly, I wasn't like prepared to have that kind of a conversation. Yeah, I could list through them and I'd just be like, okay, Joni, well,
I think she was out of her depth.
30 things that you need to say you're sorry for. And then, you know, Jonathan, here's yours and here's Susie's. And then now all of you go figure out why you put yourself in this situation, because God lets you make mistakes. There's reasons they needed to learn these lessons. And if they don't learn them, guess what God does? He does it again, only worse.
Worse. This is going to die down. Like at one point I had hoped, because it was just fresh and everything else, I had hoped that maybe they could work
just
things
get
out.
It figured out.
But now they've like doubled down and everything else. And then, I mean, to bring that guy in who.
But you know, it really is serving. It is serving people. It's kind of like, you know, when a pastor gets caught cheating and it's devastating to the church, but then it also makes everyone reevaluate their marriages, and it makes everybody.
Yes.
And so he loses something on the altar. He loses being a pastor, but the whole congregation realizes, you know, no matter how devout you are, you have to watch your sin, you have to watch your temptations, and you have to be aware of the schemes of the devil. And if you're not, then you don't have your armor on. And so they all got caught with their armor off.
Yeah. It's a shame. The whole thing's a shame. But listen, I'm glad that there are people like you. I give you credit for having me on, because you knew where I stood on the issue. Yeah. Right. And it's not like I'm not like Joni Lamb's, you know, cheering squad. I had my moments. They fired me.
And ultimately I'm all of their cheering squad. I don't want anyone to go to hell.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
If she's gone so far that she has a reprobate heart, then like, my God, I feel so sorry for her.
I hope good things come out of it. I believe maybe they will. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe they all watch this and they all got a check in their spirit.
Everyone's still young and beautiful and rich, so they might as well go enjoy themselves. Healthy in relationships. Yeah. And they have money. Those are the 3 reasons people come to me. Like, they got something wrong there. So
life is good. Listen, take care of your family.
All right.
Love your family.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody out there, raise your standards, man. Make these leaders earn it.
Yes. And you be a leader and earn it too.
Yes. Read your Bible right away. Hurry. Bye.
Bye-bye now.